If you've ever left a meeting thinking, I didn't say that properly, or I made that sound weaker than I meant, you're probably underselling yourself more than you realize. And it's usually not because you lack confidence. In fact, a lot of the time, you're doing it because you're trying to be thoughtful, careful, likable, reasonable. And in the process of doing it, you weaken your own point before anyone has even heard it. This matters more than people realize, because meetings are not just where work gets discussed. They're where people form impressions of your judgment, your clarity, and your professional presence. So if you keep leaving meetings thinking, I should have said that better, I made that too soft, I sounded like less sure than I actually am, all of those things are just a way of not being clear and consistent. And that's probably happening more often than you actually think. And the tricky part is, underselling yourself really looks dramatic. It just usually looks polite. You start with, this might be wrong, but, or maybe you'll say, I'm not sure if this is useful, or sorry, just one thought. And before you've even said anything, you've already reduced the value of your point, because people don't respond to what you say. They actually respond to how much clarity, conviction, and the weight you place behind it. And this is where meetings become revealing, because you can grow. And let's say you really know what you're talking about, and you've done growth with one topic or one area of expertise. And you know what you're talking about, and still make it sound optional. And you don't want to make it sound optional. You know what you're talking about. So you can have a good point and wrap it in such much softness that it sounds like people can just ignore it. You can be thoughtful and still talk yourself out of your own authority. And not silence, not self-dilution. So once you notice this, you can see and start to see it everywhere. And you see it in the person who starts with 5 disclaimers before making the strongest point in the room. You see it with the person who knows the answer, but presents it in a very vague explanation or possibility. You see it when a person who keeps the training wheels on their sentence, even when they already know how to write it. Some people speak as if every idea needs a helmet, elbow pads, and written parental consent before they can actually enter the room. So the problem is not politeness. It's what that politeness is doing to your presence. And this is why some people stay invisible in meetings, even when they actually know what they're talking about. So why does this happen? I would say it's usually because of 3 reasons. So I'll explain them to you. But I want you to see it. So when you see this, it becomes very predictable. So first, people are trying not to sound arrogant. Nobody wants to sound arrogant, correct? But a lot of thoughtful people are uncomfortable sounding too certain. So they overcorrect. They soften their language so much that they stop sounding clear. And then they think they're being balanced, but what actually comes across is uncertainty. You're not being clear. Second, another reason that I think why this happened is people try to avoid being wrong in public. So meetings can feel exposing because you're explaining yourself. So instead of making a point clearly, they hedge. They leave themselves an exit. It sounds badly. They can retreat. No, you don't want to sound badly. You want to say what you want to say, so say it. So if someone disagrees, they can say, well, that's not exactly what I meant, so it feels safer. But it also means your point never fully stays with people and people don't receive it. The third reason, I think, is that people are still in the early stages of their role. And this is a big one. So they still show up if they're there to observe, support, or wait to be invited, but they don't actually step in. Even when they're now expected to contribute more directly, they hesitate. And all those gaps matter because meetings don't just reward good thinking, they reward usable thinking. So, for example, questions. Can people hear your point clearly? 1. 2, can they understand what you're actually saying? 3, can they tell whether you believe it? And that's the real issue, because you want to show and see that other people see how you're going to fix it without becoming performative. Obviously, that's contribution. So, how do we fix all of this in meetings and without being performative? So I would say, first, stop apologizing for your point before you even made it. You don't need to announce it. And you don't need to announce your uncertainty every time you speak. So instead of saying, for example, this might be completely wrong, but say, one thing we should consider is this. Another one, instead of saying, sorry, just a thought, say, my view is, and direct to everybody in the room. Same idea, but it's a completely different impact. So because now your point arrives standing up and not already bent in half. So a second one, I would say, finish the sentence you actually mean. And this is where people lose themselves. Some people may start with a clear thought, they soften it, qualify it, add disclaimers, and leave themselves exits. By the end, the point barely has any structure left. If your real point is, I think this will create confusion for the client, say that. Just say it. Don't turn it into, for example, I don't know, maybe there's just a slight chance it could be a bit unclear. At that point, the horse has bolted. And so has your point. Third, the third one, how to fix it, I would say, is separate confidence from clarity. So you don't need to sound fearless. You don't need to dominate the room. You don't need to become louder. You just need clarity. And clarity doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you usable. A calm, clear point carries far more weight than a nervous, over-explained one. And that's good news, because it means you don't need a new personality. You just need to stop undermining the value of what you already know. One simple way to practice this, and you can start. So before meeting, decide one point you want to make clear. 1, not 5, just 1. So think, okay, I'm going to this meeting. I've got several points, but I'm going to choose one, and I'm going to make it really clear. Questions to ask yourself. What do I think? Make it clear. What matters here? Number 2, what matters here? And number 3, what do I want to add? Those 3 questions, I'll repeat them. What do you think? What matters here? 2. And what do I want to add? With those 3 questions, answer them with that one clear point that you want to make clear. And now you're not waiting to see if you earn the right to speak. You're arriving ready to contribute. So when you get to the meeting, you are there ready with all your questions answered. And this is what I want to say. And you contribute in a dialogue, of course. Another useful shift would be notice when and where you're speaking from. So where are you? Questions. Are you trying to avoid judgment? 2, trying to sound nice? And 3, trying to avoid conflict? And 4, are you trying to add value or not? Because the more focus you have in how you're being perceived, the more likely you're to undersell what you're actually saying. So, Professional presence is and it gets stronger when you focus shifts from how am I coming across to what is useful to say here. And that's where you want to be. What is useful to say here? So that's when people start hearing you differently. And that's when you start hearing yourself differently, because a lot of people, their meeting voice is built from habit, not truth. And you don't want to build that habit. You want to build a habit of truth. So if this is you, the answer is not to become louder. It's to become cleaner. Less apology, less dilution, less unnecessary hedging, more clarity, more structure, more trust in your own contribution. And then you will be clean and clear, trustworthy, and you will trust yourself in what you're saying. Because when you stop underselling yourself in meetings, people don't just hear more from you. They understand you more clearly, and that changes how you are seen. So seeing this clearly is the start, but how you show up next is what changes how people see you. So if you recognize yourself with this and you want to become someone people will listen to, trust, and take seriously at work, that's exactly what we do inside the mentorship, and we build it. You will find the link below. I'll see you there.